Hello once again everyone and welcome back to the Zettel. I'm joined once again by Eric, and today we're going to be going over our next part of the Schielhau. So now we're going to get to its counter against Phflug, and for countering Phflug there's a couple things I want to bring up. Is number one, which Phflug you're countering, and number two, this is another one of those instances where we're less countering just the flat position, though I'll go into that a little more, and more the idea of I'm countering the action that comes out of it. So before we get into that, we kind of need to skip ahead a little bit in the Zettel, if you're reading chronologically, to talk about the Absetzen. So Absetzen, setting aside, is basically the idea of going, in particular to my right Phflug, though it works on both sides, making this opening, creating this gap so that someone does try to cut into it, or thrust into it for that matter, and then I close that gap off by rushing back in from the center. Now certainly, if I'm just standing in Phflug and he's just in an open position, I can just launch a straight thrust and hit him. That is not necessarily an Absetzen, that's just me thrusting from Phflug. But in particular, I find that the Schielhau works best if it is connected to that play. So just to go over it very briefly, for sake of I'm standing in short point, or Eisenfort, right? I open up to give him target, he starts cutting in, and I close off against it to either get the slice to the neck or the stab if I'm a little bit more on target. That's what's happening. And the reason this works is because he's cutting into it and I see that over, it gives me something to go against and I can lock him down nice and securely. That's good for me, and that's generally speaking what you need to fear from the Phflug. Because if someone's just standing here and they're not doing anything with it, a lazy or non-active Phflug, you can just over into it or Zorn into it. Generally, if they're going to try to parry from there, it's not very strong. If they're doing what they should be doing, which is parrying with attacks, or better, counterattacking, then it's scary. So with that in mind, that's kind of what we're starting with. So, Eric is now standing in that active Phflug, and what he has just done is he has opened himself up on purpose, hoping that I will throw this over so that he can upset me and strike. Now, the biggest danger here, and the reason the Schielhau works is because of its tumble. If I try to, for example, and we'll do this slow, over or Zorn, and then wind against it, right? I will always lose out because I have to lift this way, or I have to reinforce, and he just has the stronger shape coming in. I won't ever be able to beat him on that strength. Not as well as mentioned, he can go from Phflug to long point, or he can go from Phflug to basically also long point, but much even stronger. He has a farther way to go than I do. The best I can hope for is maybe pulling back and getting rid of this, but it should also be noted where Eric is aiming. He's doing the same thing that I will do with my shield. He's aiming kind of here into my shoulder socket as this is coming down, which now for me to push that up in my face, I gotta get it all the way across me. Generally speaking, this kills bad shields 9 out of 10 times. Now, the way the Schielhau beats it is the same way that it was beating the Olmer, which is that it tumbles. So slow motion, one, make sure that you are first casting that over. So I talked about this in the very first video I talked about. I don't want this to be, I'm throwing a shield, because then I'm caught in the transition. And furthermore, Eric may see what's happening, and while yes, in theory, Schielhau counters this, he has time to modify it, and I have seen that happen over and over and over again. Instead, I want him to believe what's happening is like all of our other Meisterhau. I'm casting it over, then I'm turning it into a Schielhau as soon as he takes the bait. So he made an opening, I'm giving him what he wants, but I'm not. That's really what makes all the Meisterhau so dangerous, is that they look like an over until they're not. So, what I really want to focus on here is, as our blades are interacting, when I turn my thumb and step behind it, my blade gets the benefit of, even if he was going all the way up to the ox, right, it's still locked out the same place. When our swords meet in the middle here, because I've turned mine over, it doesn't matter how hard he pushes, I just have a better lateral shape than he does. I'm always going to win that fight. So, here's that again once more slowly as I talk through it, and then we'll do a couple at semi-regular speed. Obviously, I'm not wearing any gear, so we're not going full speed because this is a thrust, but we'll do it a little bit more crisply. So, again, he goes into a Phflug, which gives me that opportunity. I'm casting that over until it turns into a Schielhau. So now we'll do a couple a little more regular. Let's have you give me an opening for this. So one step back and then, yep. So we're ready, we're going around. He makes that, oh look, oh look, oh look. And that time I went a little bit over, which again, if you're going to go over a shoulder, going over their right shoulder is better than going over their left shoulder. You might get a slice, but generally speaking, over here, his arms are out of the way, I can then grapple him or touch Laufen or anything like that. Laufen touch, right? So, ready to cut. Oh, there it is. There's the nice shot. And the more you treat it as an over till it's not, and just step the same way we were against the air, the better. Mechanically, everything is in my favor. There's no reason for me to be afraid of what Eric is doing, as long as I trip the bait. And this also is a good illustration of kind of Voronnachian minute principle. Basically, Eric is doing a knock response by giving the invitation, right? And you could argue this is him taking the vor from the knock. Tinfoil hats on for a second, right? He's trying to set a trap, which one could say is being in the vor from the knock, but he's still allowing me to attack first. I am going okay, and if I'm stupid and just throwing over, his trap works, moment of indes, I die, right? In fact, probably not even a moment of indes because I just went right into his hand. He had the vor the whole time, essentially. However, instead, I see what's happening, I start my over, and then indes is when I turn. The vor becomes mine. His action also completes, which is the other important thing to be aware about the Meisterhau. They are counter hits for the majority. They attack the guard by itself. We'll get to that in a second. But they are counter strikes. His strike must be happening, and furthermore must complete for my strike to hit him. Otherwise, it doesn't work. Now, the next thing we're going to talk about, and for this we will switch sides, is countering just the guard by itself. Now, again, if he's just standing in a lazy right Phflug, and he was not going to do anything, yes, I can cast my Schielhau and I can hit him. However, I find that because he's here, more people are willing to push across harder, and rather than just parrying or even thrusting, they end up over here. That's not necessarily the end of the world. I get the opportunity to then either do clearing by winding around, or also you will get a nice vert from there. That's great, but that's me having to do two actions that open me up, either to a slice in the case of this vert, or to him just coming back in, especially if he creates distance. Instead, I find the best time to use the Schielhau just flat against a guard is if he's standing in left Phflug. And we again need to skip ahead in Zettel a little bit, because they don't describe the guards until we get to here. So left Phflug. You got your thumb on the blade so that the true edge stands upward. The benefit of standing here versus here, this gives you so much more lateral pressure. It gives you a lot more control in regards to getting rid of things. It lines you up for your strongest thrust as opposed to this, where you're already in extension. And it allows you to guard everything on this side without really needing to move. If I go from here to here, there's that moment where my hands have to turn over. This is not very strong. Here to here, nothing changed. I can actually even choose to lock it in further if I want. So again, if someone is standing in this strong Phflug, and usually they'll have their tip right at you, because if I just throw it over, it can just reinforce against it, and he's in a great place to hit me. This is basically the sketch. However, regardless of that, because my Schielhau can tumble, I see this, now I can just pop a direct Schielhau. I'll go over that all the time. If he tries to reinforce, it won't do anything because I'm going to go down as weak. Even if we end up here, now it is a good time for me to look for those other opportunities because you'll have to lift or things along those lines. So this is actually very good. This is also actually kind of a fun one. You can sort of combo this into a Krumfau, which is wherein I throw my shield against this. Eric is going to realize that he's losing and lift up to Ox. So I'm throwing my shield, cool. And so at that last minute, as it's going up, much like I would cut to the other side, I go ahead and turn it over, which can get me that nice shot. You can step up next to them if you want, or not, doesn't really matter. And that's kind of a neat combo that people don't think about. It's always Krump shield, never shield Krump. But I like this one a lot, so we'll show the other side just because it's a fun bonus. And this isn't out of the Zettel, this is just a cool opportunity that I find when you do this. So again, I'm throwing my shield, Eric's gonna raise up. Oh, thanks. Right into target, and I'm not terribly worried about that, because I can always drive down. And if you are worried, you can just keep your right foot in front. Either way though, that is how the shield kills Phflug. It's really not that complicated. If they're just standing in a lazy Phflug, just hit them, frankly. They're gonna parry drastically with it anyway, so nothing really to concern yourself about it. If they are someone who's ready and charged to do that thrust from below, or they're doing specifically the Obsetsen, then you do need to worry about it. And it should be noted, if someone is just flat thrusting at you, be it from Phflug or not, generally speaking, most people do thrust out of Phflug or Ox, but in particular, if they are just flat thrusting at you with Phflug, this can be used as a parry and as a counterattack. It works out the same. It also will always prevent, because he's coming forward, he doesn't get the opportunity to change through below, versus people can do that if you go against their right Phflug. If they're in their left Phflug, just blast it, just destroy it. you have nothing to fear. Same with people standing with their thumb on the blade right in the middle, kind of an Eisenfort. The Schiel can also kill that, but that's beyond the Zettel. So, thank you very, very much, Eric. And thank you all very much for watching. Next time we will go over the last two plays of the Schielhau, that being how it can slice into the hands, and also how it kills long point. So, thank you very much for watching. We'll go over some other techniques another time.